I'm going to make another video to expand on what I had already talked about in the video, how the mass media works. A lot of people don't realize just how fully almost all of our beliefs are subtly influenced by media campaigns. One of the best books to learn about the ad industry itself is called The Father of Spin by Larry Tai. It talks about one of the founders of the modern ad campaign, Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was a genius at subtle advertising. For example, if one of his clients was a bacon manufacturer, he wouldn't simply advertise that his bacon was better than others and try to take away market share. Instead, he would find doctors who promoted large breakfasts as healthy, and then he would use his connections within media to publish these articles about how scientifically it's been proven that large breakfasts are healthy. And part of large breakfast, obviously, is bacon, and so, using methods like that, he was able to greatly increase the effectiveness of ad campaigns, using specialists and using front groups. Bernays was one of the people that really founded these techniques almost a century ago. This is sometimes things as simple as indoctrinating young children to pursue unhealthy behaviors. McDonald's is particularly good at this. Look at all of their advertising aimed at young children. Sometimes this even comes through our school system. The international banking industry has actually incorporated into the American school curriculum education on how the Federal Reserve is useful. This is just blatant propaganda by the largest parasitic industry out there. Often these campaigns are extremely subtle. The De Beers diamond monopoly, which has been controlled by the Oppenheimer family for 4 generations, basically everything you have ever heard or believe about diamonds is a result of campaigns by this company. Then there are companies that use think tanks or academics as witting or unwitting fronts for a certain agenda. All the information you hear out there from helpful scientists about how healthy soy is for the last 10 years has generally all been funded by the soy industry. Then there's what I'd call the saturation campaign, where they just place so many ads that you, against your better judgment, start to believe it. These constant ads for luxury cars until you think that anybody that doesn't own a luxury car, there must be something wrong with them. You see this as a very effective technique in getting new parents to buy off on the use of baby formula. You can't open a magazine about babies or children without seeing smiling babies drinking from bottles, and you'll never see a picture of anyone breastfeeding because there's no money to promote those ads. And after you see a few thousand pictures of smiling babies drinking baby formula, you start to think, well, maybe it is okay. This has just happened subconsciously. In addition to the saturation campaign, there are also some other interesting methods that people in power just traditionally use in order to retain control. Stirring up side issues, stirring up side debates, rather than having a real debate about the health of a particular food product. They'll stir up a lot of side debates and try to muddy the waters. And you can see this happening politically. There's constantly meaningless little political arguments that deflect from the real issues of the banking industry and the inordinate amount of control that the banking industry has in this country and in most countries around the world. But that's never really addressed because there are a million little side debates. And people just bring these debates up naturally. It's a way that anyone in power instinctively knows to deflect criticism from themselves. Look at the British Empire. They never drew the lines of a country around one cohesive ethnic group. They always drew the lines of their colonies around several competing ethnic groups, so you would have constant tension between the groups. And no one would ever start to question the people who were actually controlling things. And if there weren't other ethnic groups, the British would actually import them, like in Fiji, where they imported people from India to be able to still have a constant tension and, just limiting the amount of free time that people have so that no one really has time to analyze the important issues. So what do you do about this, and how can you find out the truth? Well, one of the first things you can do is try to limit yourself to non-biased media sources, which is fairly difficult. Even a lot of educational documentaries nowadays are bankrolled by industry which has an agenda in just getting something out into the public consciousness. One thing, though, that's not particularly biased is the publishing industry. There are some books which are totally bankrolled by industry and government, but most books aren't. Beyond books, there are really only a couple of non-biased magazines. One is Adbusters, which goes out of its way to have no influence by industry. Unfortunately, they have a very pessimistic and non-solution oriented slant for most things, but they are a great source for finding out the truth. There's also the Foreign Press Review magazine, which gives you a much broader view based on press articles from around the world, so that you can see how these campaigns develop in different countries and just how slanted the advertising and media bias is in each country. Beyond those two magazines and books, you're really only left with small alternative media outlets like the internet. People who you can just kind of get a sense aren't really pushing a particular agenda. But in reality, almost nobody has time to fully research all of these issues and know everything that's going on. So you're really left with only a few ways of trying to find the truth. One is the scientific method. The scientific method, unfortunately, only works for things that have already occurred, things that you can observe. An analogy would be walking through life backwards. You can see once the use of baby formula has been incorporated, and you've taken 10 years to do studies, how deadly baby formula is, and you can see how deadly hydrogenated oils are. But unfortunately, you only get that data after you've already done a lot of damage. So the scientific method is a kind of limited way of learning the truth, although it is sort of a gold standard in being able to prove something absolutely. Another way of learning the truth is the processing of your subconscious. Your conscious mind can only really analyze one thing at a time, but your subconscious can analyze a lot more factors. Unfortunately, this is kind of like sleepwalking through life, because you never really know the logical process through which you've come to your conclusions. You may have a general idea that such and such food is healthy or such and such food isn't healthy, but you don't really know why you feel that way, and so maybe your subconscious has been influenced by negative media sources, or maybe it's just some innate knowledge. So that way doesn't work perfectly either. Another great way of learning the truth is simply faith. You find somebody that has been successful and you just blindly copy what they do. The analogy here would be walking through life blindfolded. As long as the person leading you is pretty knowledgeable, you will likely do okay. For example, there's just so much information and propaganda out there related to food. The easiest thing to do is simply copy what healthy people eat, and particularly copy what healthy societies eat. Then you don't have to analyze anything. You just copy them and you know that these people were healthy, these people were successful. As long as I copy them blindly, I will probably do okay. All of those ways of finding the truth have limitations, though. When you follow them, you are basically walking blindfolded, asleep, and backwards through life. There is one way of finding the truth, though, where you finally are awake, walking forward, and with your eyes open. And this is just by raising your level of consciousness. We all probably see people who, on some issues, and maybe on all issues, are just highly enlightened, and this is natural for them. Nobody really taught them to believe a certain way, they just know it intrinsically. And the issue of how to raise your level of consciousness is something that I'll pursue in a further video. But just consider the fact that all of your schooling, all of your religious institutions, everything out there that's supposed to be educating you, it's never taught you how to raise your level of consciousness. It's all just about repeating information. There are methods of raising your consciousness, though, and it's something that you will rarely learn, and hopefully I can do a good job in a future video of explaining it.